The Returned Codex, the Sacred Guidelines of Manifestation. Chapter 3, Emotions, Frequencies, and State of Being. 1. Emotions first. I understand that manifesting is primarily about emotions. Emotions are the real language of humanity, and they carry the vibration I send out. It is not only about the physical object, the exact situation, or the circumstances I try to imagine. It is mainly about the experience I wish to feel. I trust that God, life, and the universe can form the right circumstances through which that experience can come to me. That puzzle is greater than my human mind can fully oversee. Personal, collective, and invisible factors are involved that I do not all need to understand or control. That is why I focus on the essence of what I wish to experience. I feel the emotion, recognize the state of being that belongs to it, and allow the greater whole to find the right form. When I align with the emotion behind my wish, I send out a purer signal than when I lose myself in every detail of how it must happen. I bring my attention to the feeling of freedom, love, abundance, peace, joy, or fulfillment that I truly seek. From that emotional core, the right form may arise. 2. State of being. My state of being is the place from which I think, feel, choose, and respond to life. It influences how I see myself, how I interpret situations, how I receive opportunities, and how I move through the world. That is why I do not wait until my outer circumstances have fully changed before I allow myself to feel freer, calmer, more confident, more loved, or more abundant. I begin to bring that inner state to life within myself today. This state is not something I only receive after my manifestation appears. It is part of the energy through which I create. When I start living inwardly as someone who can receive what he wishes for, something begins to shift in me. My posture, my choices, my reactions, my presence, and the way I carry myself begin to reflect another version of who I am becoming. Step by step, I stop moving as someone who is still waiting for permission from the outside world. I begin to live from the inner reality I am choosing. The more often I return to that state, the more natural it becomes. In this way, I do not only hope for a new reality, I become more aligned with the person who can recognize it, receive it, and live from it. 3. Frequency bands. I understand that my life does not simply unfold on one fixed line. My emotions, thoughts, choices, habits, and environment continually bring me into a certain frequency band. When I grow, break through old fears, or reach a new state of being, I shift into another layer of experience. This is not only an idea, but something I can feel in my body, in my reactions, in my clarity, and in the people or situations I begin to attract around me. When I rise beyond a fear, an old habit, or an inner blockage, I enter a higher frequency band. Still, this does not always mean that my old band has immediately disappeared completely. Sometimes the old can still try to pull me back through familiar patterns, toxic people, temptations, alcohol, drama, insecurity, or situations that once felt normal. Especially when I am standing less strongly in my new state, I may be more sensitive to those old influences. That is why I learn to recognize which band I am on. I observe which emotions I feed, which thoughts return, which people influence my energy, and which choices pull me upward or downward. When something tries to bring me back to an old layer, I do not see it as failure, but as awareness. I receive the chance to choose again for the direction in which I truly want to grow. The spiritual dimensions and frequency layers are not distant or abstract worlds to me. They reveal themselves in my daily life, in my state of being, in my reactions, in my habits, and in the environment I move through. When I live on a lower band, I more often attract situations that match fear, doubt, chaos, or repetition. When I live on a higher band, I begin to experience more clarity, peace, trust, synchronicity, and conscious choices. I understand that every victory opens a new layer. When I truly rise beyond a fear, I do not only change one thought, it's my entire experience that shifts. Still, this new frequency asks for a certain form of stability, even though we always move up and down, just like everything in life, just like our emotional shifts and our personal periods of happiness or setbacks. But I may learn to remain standing in my new energy, even when old circumstances still pull at me for a while. The more often I choose my new state of being, the less power the old frequency still has over me. In this way, I learn to move consciously between layers of experience. I do not automatically fall back into old habits just because they feel familiar. I recognize the lower frequency when it presents itself, and I choose again for the frequency that matches my growth, my awareness, and my future reality. I know that relapse can sometimes happen at the moment when I have not yet fully left an old frequency behind. That does not mean I am back at the beginning. It means my system is still learning to experience the new layer as normal. Old frequencies can still feel like safety for a while, simply because they are familiar. But familiar is not the same as right. When I begin to see that difference, I regain choice. I also understand that some people, places, or habits are connected to an earlier version of myself. When I grow, certain environments may no longer nourish me, but instead pull me back down. That is why I pay attention to what raises my energy and what lowers my energy. I do not need to judge anyone, but I may honestly recognize which frequency something activates within me. Every time I consciously do not reach back for my old frequency, I strengthen my new reality. I train my body, my thoughts, and my emotions to remain higher, even when old triggers appear. In this way, my new frequency becomes not only a temporary peak, but a new foundation from which I live, choose, attract, and manifest. 4. Fear as creative power. I understand that fear is not my enemy. Fear is energy, emotion, and movement. Because fear is often strongly charged, it can also carry strong creative power. Humanity has become familiar over centuries with creating from fear, struggle, lack, and survival. That is why fear can feel more familiar to many people than peace, even when peace is closer to truth. When fear arises around something I desire, I do not automatically see it as a sign to stop. I examine which direction that energy wants to move in. Fear around change, receiving, or becoming visible can show me that my wish already carries a strong charge within me. Instead of making my wish smaller, I bring my attention to what I truly want to experience, who I become because of it, and which positive change is connected to it. In this way, I learn to redirect fear. I do not use it to return to the old, but to see my desire more clearly. When I understand the energy behind my fear, I can direct it again toward growth, courage, and creation. Then fear is no longer a blockage, but a force that shows me where a next layer of awareness may be opened. 5. Mastering emotions. I do not suppress my emotions, but I also do not simply let them determine my direction. Every emotion carries information within it. When I feel anger, fear, sadness, joy, or desire, I first learn to listen to what that emotion is showing me before I react. An emotion does not need to become a decision immediately. I do not need to turn every inner wave into words, actions, or conclusions. Sometimes it is enough to feel what is moving, without immediately building a new story around it. In this way, I give myself the space to remain conscious, instead of being automatically pulled along by a temporary state. The better I learn to understand my emotions, the less they swing me back and forth. I recognize more quickly when I'm acting from peace, and when I am reacting from tension, pain, or old habit. That distinction gives me strength. When I learn to master my emotions, my creative power becomes purer. I remain closer to my inner center, even when something is moving within me. In this way, I become less dependent on strong highs and lows, and I gradually learn to manifest from peace, clarity, and awareness. Chapter 4. God's Terrain. 1. Letting go of the how. I do not need to know exactly how my manifestation will come to me. I may be clear about what I wish to experience, which direction I want to move in, and which emotion I want to feel, but the full path toward it belongs to a greater whole. God, life, or the universe can see more connections, people, moments, opportunities, and possibilities than my human mind can oversee. I choose not to hold on too tightly to one specific path, because I remain open to possibilities I may not yet see. Something can unfold in a different way than my mind expected, while life may already be forming a better path in the background. I understand that my imagination is often shaped by what I already know, while God, life, and the universe can work beyond the limits of my current view. That is why I leave space for a form that fits better than anything I could have thought of in advance. My wish may come to me through an unexpected opportunity, a conversation, a person, a detour, a shift, or a coming together of circumstances I could never have planned myself. I do not need to control every detail of the path in order to trust that the right doors can open. My task is to keep my feeling, my intention, and my direction pure. I remain aligned with the experience I wish to receive, while allowing the greater whole to find the right form. I let go of the how, so life can also surprise me with possibilities my mind did not yet know. I remain open to signs, opportunities, and shifts that are different from what I expected. When something does not unfold the way my mind had imagined it, I do not immediately close the door. I look deeper and keep feeling which direction is revealing itself. Sometimes a delay is protection. Sometimes a detour is a better route. And sometimes an unexpected change is exactly the opening that was needed. What first seems to move me away from my wish may, on a higher level, actually bring me closer to the right form. I recognize that my human view only sees part of the whole, while God, life, and the universe move from a wider field. That is why I remain available for the unknown, without letting go of my wish. I only let go of the limited form in which I thought it had to appear. In this way, I give life the space to bring me not only what I asked for, but perhaps also what is better, greater, or more fitting than anything I could have imagined myself. 2. The moment of surprise. When I have fully felt my wish and then truly let go, I give life the space to surprise me. Something appears when my control relaxes, when my attention no longer remains constantly attached to the result, and when I no longer try to hold everything with my mind. I understand that certain experiences do not arise by pulling harder, but by becoming softer. Sometimes, even when people have tried for years to receive a child, it may only happen after the pressure, planning, and constant control have finally softened. In the same way, a manifestation can sometimes come closer when my energy begins to flow freely again. Not because my desire becomes less important, but because my system is no longer tense around the result. I also understand that almost nothing in my life ever unfolds exactly as my mind had drawn it out in advance. I cannot fully control every form of energy, every choice, every word, every person, and every circumstance. I do not always know which words someone will speak, what the weather will be at a certain moment, which small delay will bring me somewhere else, which meeting will change my day, or which decision made by someone else will open a new door. Life moves through so many visible and invisible layers at the same time that my task is not to control every detail beforehand. That is why I leave room for the unexpected. When something unfolds differently than planned, I do not close off my trust. I remind myself that the form may change, but the essence of my wish may still be on its way. The moment of surprise arises precisely because I do not pin life down completely to my own scenario. I allow God, life, and the universe to work with details I could never have predicted exactly myself. 3. The puzzle of life. I understand that God, life, and the universe know more about me than my mind can currently comprehend. Every statement, belief, choice, emotion, memory, old pain, dream, and experience is part of a much greater database. Everything I have gone through, everything I have felt, and even what my soul carries from past lives is seen. Some call this the Akashic Records, the living memory of everything that ever was, is, and can become. That is why I cannot outsmart God. I may have wishes, make plans, and indicate my direction, but the greater whole also sees what lies behind those wishes. God does not only know what I ask for, but also what every fulfillment would do to me. Sometimes my mind wants to go from A to B, while life first sends me to Z, because there is something there that I need, must remember, can or may correct, or first need to experience. I trust that the puzzle of life is wiser than my own planning. For example, if both wealth and music are meant to be on my path, God may know which order serves my soul most. Perhaps I would never play the piano again if I became a millionaire first. Perhaps a certain passion must first awaken again before abundance can fully enter safely. That is why I do not only trust what I want, but also the order in which life shapes me. 4. God's ways. I understand that God's ways are not always linear. Sometimes it may seem as if I am being taken away from my path, while in truth I am being guided toward a better place. What seems like a detour to my mind may be exactly the right route for my soul. I do not need to outsmart God, life, or the universe. I trust that more is being seen behind the scenes than I can currently oversee. That is why I remain open to the path that reveals itself, even when it unfolds differently than my own planning. 5. The first movement. I understand that a manifestation does not always appear immediately in the way I expect it to. Sometimes something first arrives as a small opportunity, an unexpected conversation, a new insight, a temporary change, or a situation that I do not immediately recognize as part of my wish. That is why I learn to look deeper than the first appearance of what presents itself. When something comes onto my path that feels different from my original image, I do not reject it right away. I take a moment to feel what it is showing me. Perhaps it is not the final result yet, but it may be an opening. Perhaps it is a preparation, a key, an intermediate step, or a shift that is needed to bring me closer to the real experience. So I learn not only to manifest, but also to recognize. If I only wait for one exact outcome, I may overlook the first movements of what is already on its way. Life sometimes speaks subtly. A meeting, an idea, a change in direction, a loss of interest in the old, or a sudden new desire can already show that my reality is beginning to move. That is why I stay awake to the first movements in which my wish begins to reveal itself. I do not only look at what something appears to be at first sight, but also at what it sets in motion. What begins small may later turn out to be a great door. What appears unexpectedly may be the very beginning of the manifestation I could not yet recognize before. 6. When life leaves only one way forward. Sometimes life closes old exits until the true direction becomes clearer. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, confusing, or even frightening. I may feel as if certain choices are becoming smaller, while in truth God, life, or the universe may be guiding me away from paths that no longer belong to me. When an old reality begins to loosen, I do not immediately assume that something is going wrong. A door may close because it no longer serves my growth. A situation may become harder to continue because I am being invited to move differently. A familiar path may lose its safety because my soul is ready for another direction. What feels like pressure may sometimes be guidance in a form I did not expect. There are moments when life makes the old way harder to keep choosing, not to destroy me, but to show me that I am ready to move beyond an old pattern, an old fear, an old comfort, or an old version of myself. When the old exits become less available, the path I was avoiding may finally become visible. I do not need to love this process while it is happening, but I can learn to trust it. Sometimes movement begins because staying the same no longer feels true. Sometimes courage awakens because the old hiding place no longer protects me. Sometimes the new reality begins when life gently makes the old one too small to remain inside. When life shows me a clearer way forward, I listen more deeply. I ask what is being revealed, what is being released, and what I am being guided toward. I do not see every closed door as rejection. Some closed doors are protection. Some endings are redirection. Some walls are not there to trap me, but to keep me from walking backward. I trust that when an old way closes, another movement is already forming. The path may not yet feel easy, but it may be the one that brings me closer to the reality I asked for, the person I am becoming, and the deeper plan that God, life, and my soul already know.